50,000 soldiers walk into the desert. None of them walk out. For over a century, archaeologists have dug through the sand looking for their bones and found almost nothing. An entire Roman legion, thousands of trained men, is posted to the edge of the empire. Then, one day, the records simply stop mentioning them. No battle, no retreat, no explanation. And an emperor's own palace burns down around him during a coup. When the ashes cool, nobody can say for certain whether the body they find is actually his. 3 disappearances, 3 empires. And in every single case, historians have found the same unsettling pattern. The person who benefited most from each disappearance is also the person who controlled how the story got told. So the real question isn't just what happened to these people. It's whether we've been told the truth at all, or a story written by the men who needed us to stop asking. Case 1. The Lost Army of Cambyses, Persia/Egypt, 525 BC. Let's start with the oldest and the largest. In 525 BC, the Persian king Cambyses II had just conquered Egypt. But one holdout remained defiant, the Oracle of Amun, hidden deep in the desert at the Siwa Oasis, a religious site so influential that even Alexander the Great would later travel there to have his own kingship confirmed. Cambyses wanted it destroyed, so he sent 50,000 soldiers marching into the western desert to burn it to the ground. According to the Greek historian Herodotus, writing decades later, the army made it part-way across the sand before a catastrophic storm rose up around them, burying all 50,000 men alive so completely that not one of them ever returned. For over a century, archaeologists and adventurers have combed that desert looking for them. Explorers as famous as the man who inspired the English patient joined the search. In 2009, Italian researchers claimed to have found bones, weapons, and jewelry that might belong to the Lost Army, a discovery Egypt's own Antiquities Authority publicly dismissed as unfounded. But here's the detail that should bother you. Herodotus himself admitted he couldn't confirm this story firsthand. He was simply repeating what he'd heard, decades after the fact, from people who weren't there either. Therefore, in 2014, an Egyptologist named Olaf Kaper proposed something far less mystical and far more disturbing. While excavating at the Dakhla Oasis, directly along the route that army would have marched, Kaper uncovered inscriptions belonging to a rebel Egyptian leader named Petubastis III. His theory: there was no sandstorm at all. Cambyses' army was ambushed and destroyed by Petubastis' rebel forces. And 2 years later, when Cambyses' successor, Darius the Great, finally crushed that same rebellion, Kaper believes Darius did something very deliberate. He invented the sandstorm story, because a Persian army wiped out by Egyptian rebels was a humiliation. A Persian army swallowed by an act of nature was simply bad luck. If Kaper is right, we haven't been searching the desert for a myth. We've been searching for a mass grave that a king had every reason to make sure nobody ever found. Case 2. Legio 9 Hisapna, Roman Britain, approximately 120 AD. Now, a disappearance with far more paperwork behind it. And somehow, just as much silence. Legio 9 Hisapna was one of Rome's most experienced legions, with a service record stretching back to Julius Caesar himself. By the early 2nd century, it was stationed at Eboracum, modern-day York, holding the volatile northern frontier of Roman Britain. In 108 AD, the legion is recorded rebuilding its fortress in stone. That inscription is the last confirmed trace of them in Britain. After that, nothing. No battle report, no transfer order, no retirement record. When a new legion arrives to take over York years later, the 9th simply isn't there anymore. This mystery inspired the Eagle of the 9th and later Hollywood films. The idea of an entire legion swallowed by hostile Caledonian tribes in the misty highlands of Scotland is irresistible. But here's where the real historical debate gets sharper and considerably more political. Emperor Hadrian arrived in Britain around 122 AD and immediately began construction on what would become Hadrian's Wall, one of the most famous engineering projects in Roman history. Some historians have proposed something uncomfortable. What if the ninth wasn't lost to some vague northern skirmish, but suffered a catastrophic, humiliating defeat right as Hadrian was cementing his authority and justifying a massive new wall along that exact frontier? A disaster like that, an entire legion wiped out on Roman soil, not by a foreign superpower, but by tribes Rome was supposed to have already subdued, is exactly the kind of failure an emperor building his legacy around frontier security would have every reason to keep out of the official record. We don't have a smoking gun the way we do with Cambyses. What we have is a legion that vanishes from every list, every inscription, every record, at precisely the moment its failure would have been most inconvenient to the man in charge. Case 3. The Jianwen Emperor, Ming Dynasty, China, 1402. And now the case where the cover-up isn't a theory, it's documented fact. In 1402, the second emperor of China's Ming Dynasty, a young reformer known as the Jianwen Emperor, was losing a brutal civil war against his own uncle, Zhu Di, a powerful prince who wanted the throne for himself. When Zhu Di's forces finally broke through and captured the capital at Nanjing, the imperial palace went up in flames. When the fire was finally put out, searchers pulled a badly burned body from the ashes. Zhu Di declared it was the emperor. Case closed. He crowned himself the new Yongle Emperor on the spot. But here's the detail that should give you pause. There was no reliable way, in 1402, to actually confirm whose body that was. And almost immediately, a far more intriguing rumor began spreading through the empire. That Jianwen hadn't died in that fire at all. That he'd escaped the palace disguised as a Buddhist monk and vanished into the countryside to live out the rest of his life in hiding. Here's where this case pulls ahead of the other two, because we don't have to guess whether a cover-up happened. We know for a fact that one did. The new Yongle Emperor didn't just claim the throne. He systematically erased Jianwen's entire 4-year reign from official Chinese history. He voided the reign period from the imperial annals entirely, and extended his own father's reign on paper to cover those years instead. As if Jianwen had simply never ruled at all. It would take nearly 200 years until 1595 before a later Ming emperor formally restored Jianwen's name to the historical record. And the rumor of his survival never fully went away. Imperial records suggest Yongle sent agents to search the countryside for his missing nephew for years. One account even claims an agent found Jianwen, spoke with him, and reported back, though the records of that search were mostly destroyed, so we can't verify whether that conversation ever happened. Some historians have even connected this obsessive search to something much bigger. Yongle's famous fleet of massive ocean-going ships, commanded by the Admiral Zheng He, which sailed as far as Africa in the decades that followed. Officially opening trade routes, but according to some court rumors, partly searching for a missing emperor who may have fled even further than anyone expected. Now put all three of these cases side by side. An army that vanished into legend, while the man who benefited from that legend erased the rebellion that actually destroyed it. A legion that disappeared from the record at the exact moment its failure would have embarrassed an emperor building a wall to prove Rome's frontier was secure. And an emperor whose death was declared before anyone could verify it, by the same uncle who then spent 2 centuries trying to make sure nobody remembered he'd ever existed. In every single case, The official story conveniently protected the person telling it. That's what should stay with you here. It's not just that these three vanished. It's that the very people with the power to write history down are the same people who had the most to gain from us never asking too many questions. A sandstorm is easier to accept than a rebellion nobody warned you about. A misty frontier legend is easier to live with than an emperor's failure. And a fire is easier to close the book on than admitting you're not entirely sure whose body you actually found. Maybe the real disappearance in all three of these stories was never the army, the Legion, or the Emperor. Maybe it was the truth. If that thought unsettles you the way it should, subscribe and comment what disappearances you want to see next.